There was a witch doctor who had laid this child down, put herbs all around her body, and was about to cut her before the security guard found her and rescued her and brought her to this baby's home where I was working. I knew quite early on that I wanted to work in television. I wanted to be a video editor. I realised that in my teens, and I've put everything I possibly could into making that happen. I've worked on Love Island, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, Strictly Come Dancing, X Factor, The Voice, Made in Chelsea, what else? Too Hot to Handle, and Four in a Bed, which is possibly one of my favourite shows.
What was it that inspired you to go from being a video editor to leaving that kind of behind?
As much as I enjoyed my job, I felt just a little disillusioned by it and felt that I needed a bit of a shake-up. And a friend of mine suggested that I contact a British lady who set up an NGO in Uganda that looked after abandoned babies. Periodically, she needed media volunteers to go over and make films for change, and I just thought, yeah, why not? So I got in touch with her, and the next thing I knew, like 2 months later, I found myself on a plane to Kampala, Uganda. Kampala can seem really kind of glitzy and cosmopolitan and fun, but you scratch the surface and there is a lot of sadness there, and a lot of that comes from poverty. One of the NGO representatives was telling me about some of the children in the baby's home where I'd be working, and she told me about this little girl who had survived child sacrifice. And I was like, what? You know, I'm part Nigerian, so I've heard about witchcraft and juju and witch doctors, and my grandfather was a traditional healer, so I've grown up hearing about the occult, but never had I heard of child sacrifice. The very first day I sought her out, and she was a shadow. She would cower in the corner of the room, not look at anybody, visibly scarred and just truly traumatized. She was found on a construction site by a security guard. There was a witch doctor who had laid this child down, put herbs all around her body, and was about to cut her before the security guard found her and rescued her and brought her to this baby's home where I was working. And she'd been there about 6 months before I arrived. She's really special to me, yeah. So I'd heard about this practice, then met this girl, fallen head over heels in love with her, and researched. I wanted to know what there was to know about it. So I read articles, I spoke to people, I spoke to locals, and very quickly recognised that this was a real problem. This was prevalent in Uganda. And there was always somebody who knew someone who had their child sacrificed, or, it was very much a taboo subject, but people were aware of it happening.
Why do people do child sacrifices in Uganda? What is the reason for that?
There is a widespread belief in not just Uganda that when you sacrifice a child, it will lead to riches, to prosperity, power. So people will visit a witch doctor with an issue, and depending on what the issue is, the witch doctor will say, okay, you go and bring me the head of a child, you go and bring me the genitals of a boy, you go and bring me the tongue of a girl, and you'll have what you need.
You spoke to other survivors. Can you give us another survivor story?
So there was one boy who had been lured out by his uncle to go and buy some soap. On the way, they'd picked up this little boy's twin brother. So the two of them went off to buy soap with their uncle, and the uncle led them into a bush and cut off the head of one of the twin boys while the other one watched, and then removed his genitals and left him in a pool of his own blood. And the other boy ran away and was able to explain what had happened to his family. And the uncle was burnt alive by the mob justice. There was not an opportunity for it to go to trial because of that. Often the children they're sacrificed when they're conscious, when they're alive. They're not given chloroform, they're not knocked over the head. They are conscious and they feel everything. It's not quick. It's incredibly painful. And this boy watched his brother go through that. And that is one of many, many, many stories that I've heard like that. I felt I had a duty to do everything in my power. I just felt like I had no other choice, and this was something that in a heartbeat I wanted to dedicate the rest of my life to stopping. And, you know, I feel that passions, they choose you. I think to a certain extent, I think it was a physical, emotional kind of kinship that I had with this subject, and I think anybody in my shoes would have done exactly the same. You know, I was absolutely dogged about this, and I was stunned to the core that this was happening, and I was willing to do anything and everything in my power to help these children and to ensure that they had a brighter future to grow up in. And I met the Deputy Speaker who, you know, said, look, if you're interested, you know, we do have gaps in legislation and we could probably benefit from, you know, specific legislation, you know, but it's going to cost money, it's going to, you know, take a lot of time and blah, blah. And I was just like, yep, sign me up. I'm your woman. So I had no real understanding of what I was doing, but I knew what the milestones were. You know, it's to find a legislator, finish, you know, have a draft of a bill, present it to the Speaker, and then they find an MP to present the bill, and, you know, the journey properly begins there.
Why did you have to introduce the bill? What, was child sacrifice not illegal at this point?
So obviously it's illegal to sacrifice a child, but defendants were tried under the penal code or other such laws which didn't carry particularly strong sentences. There was no definition of child sacrifice. You know, so, you know, cases where a child was abducted and, for example, kept in a shrine and gradually sacrificed. That's a case I've heard of. They would be charged with kidnap and torture, which would not carry an adequate sentence. I spent the next 7 years actually going back and forth. So I would go back to London, earn enough money, then fly back out to Uganda, mobilise MPs, let them know that there is a private bill that is going to be introduced. Are you interested in supporting this? And very, very slowly I built up a team and a network of people who would then, you know, later come to support me on Parliament floor when this bill was introduced.
Was there ever a point where you felt like giving up?
Yes. Often. You know, there are challenges when it comes to something like this, introducing something like this. I was very much alone for the first part of this journey, and child sacrifice is a nasty business. More than once, I've been threatened. I've been told that if I continue, terrible things will happen. There'll be consequences. I've had people turn up to my house asking where I was. You know, so I was scared a lot of the time. But I think I made a pact with myself that their lives are worth more than mine, and that this was something that I'd pledged to stop no matter what, stop as much as I could. To giving up, I thought about it, but realised that I physically couldn't. I didn't want to think about whether or not this bill would pass, but it was the timing of it. You know, like we were just approaching the end of the 10th Parliament in Uganda, and this was the Tuesday, and if the bill hadn't passed by the Friday, we'd have had to start all over again. And that would have meant another, not 7 years, but at least another 2-3 years. I would have had it in me, but it would have felt like a real struggle. So we passed it in record time. And I just remember, we were told that it was unlikely to pass that day. We knew if it was going to pass, it was going to be that week. But I remember getting a call on the Tuesday, on the 4th of May, 2021, from my, colleague in Parliament, and this was at 10 o'clock, and I was sitting on my sofa in my pyjamas thinking, all right, I've got today off. And he was like, Annie, we're presenting the bill at 10:30. And I looked at my watch and it was 10 o'clock, and I was like, can I swear? What the f***? Got on a boda, which is like a motorcycle taxi, was calling people on the way, calling the MP, couldn't get hold of anybody. And I said to the driver, I was just like, we need to be there in record time. It's like a half an hour journey. We got there in 10 minutes. I got there with about 2 minutes to spare. It was meant to be. I was meant to be there. And I was just so thrilled that I was. And I sat there shaking for, 2 hours. And yeah, and I don't know how to put into words what I felt when it passed, really. I couldn't believe it. I looked at my colleague, the same one who called me at 10 o'clock saying that the bill was going to be read, and he just looked at me and he was like, it has passed. And I lost it. I completely lost it. Something that I had been, along with it, my team, fighting for 7 years. It had happened. I will never forget that feeling. In a weird way, I miss it. I miss having a purpose. It's like 80% pride and relief and joy and all of that. But, I grew up with this bill. I became a woman working on this, and it was a huge, huge part of me. And it was gone like that. So in a weird, I know this sounds messed up, but there was sadness, weirdly, attached to that. Because my baby, it had grown up and was doing what it was meant to do. And I just think I never, growing up, felt that I was capable, really, of doing that much or having that much of an impact on the world. And in that moment, I just felt like I was enough. And that's something that I, along with the people that I work with, had really made a difference in the world and had saved the lives of so many vulnerable children. And I'm just so proud of it.
And I remember unlocking my phone and WhatsApp was on, and I kind of closed WhatsApp and clicked on the camera. And the second I clicked the film, I saw what I guess the whole world saw.